Hi everybody, today we're going to learn about complex numbers, dividing, and this is lesson number 3. So how do we divide complex numbers? So the rule says, in order to divide complex numbers, you have to multiply top and bottom by the conjugate of the bottom. Okay, so we already spoke about the conjugate last lesson, and we remember that conjugate is just the same number. If z is the conjugate, a plus bi, so a minus bi is the conjugate. So let's look at an example. So let's say I need to do 2 plus 3i to divide to 1 plus 5i. The rule says multiply top and bottom by the conjugate of the bottom. The conjugate of the bottom is just 1 minus 5i. So I multiply top and bottom by the conjugate of the bottom. So the first thing we have to pay attention is that by doing that, 1 minus 5i to divide to 1 minus 5i is 1, because every number to divide to himself is 1. So we're not actually changing the value, but we are changing the way it will be written. The reason we do this is because we want that the bottom will not have an I in it. That means we'll not have a square root. We've done that also in real numbers where we wanted to cancel the root on the bottom. So we're going to start multiplying. So let's look at the first part. I'm going to start with the denominator. So 1 times 1. So I have two options here. 1, just multiply out. Option 2, we can pay attention to the fact that 1 plus 5i multiplied by 1 minus 5i, this is the difference of two squares. And the difference of two squares, if you remember, is a squared minus b squared. So I can straight away write it's 1 squared minus 5i squared. Now, if we didn't remember this, I'll show another example how to do. If we didn't remember this fact, how to multiply out. I'm going to continue just with the denominator. 1 squared is 1, minus is minus. And now 5i squared is 5 squared is 25, and I squared, remember, is minus 1. So this actually says minus 25, which means plus 25. So on the bottom, we have 26. Let's look at the top. So on the top, we're just going to multiply every guy on the left with every guy on the right. So 2 times 1 is 2. 2 times minus 5i is minus 10i. 3i times 3i times 1 is 3i. And 3i times minus 5i is 15, minus 15i squared. Now we treat the I squared, that is minus 1. Minus is plus, so that's actually plus 15. So we'll just tidy it all together. So on the left-hand side, we have 2 plus 15, which makes 17. And then the imaginary part is minus 10i plus 3i, which is minus 7i. We put it all separately now. So we write 17 over 26 minus 7 over 26i. The reason we write it in that form is because usually they will say, do the dividing and write it in the form of a plus bi or x plus yi. So I want a real part and the imaginary part. Okay, let's look at another example. So maybe we have 1 plus 5i to divide to 2 minus 3i. Multiply top and bottom by the conjugate of the bottom. The conjugate of the bottom is 2 plus 3i. And the top, we multiply by the same number, which is 2 plus 3i. Now we have to multiply. So on the top, 1 times 2 is 2. 1 times 3i is 3i. 5i times 2 is 10i. And 5i times 3i is plus 15i squared. I squared has to be dealt with. That's minus 1. Minus 1 times 15 is minus 15. So when we put it together, this is only the top part. Do the denominator after. So the real part is 2 minus 15, which is minus 13. And 3i plus 10i is plus 13i. Now we'll do the denominator. And remember the denominator, we said it's the difference of two squares. So straight away I can say it's 2 squared plus, and remember plus because I squared is minus 1. So I can straight away write plus 3 squared. 2 squared is 4, 3 squared is 9, so it makes 13. I'm going to split it. So it's minus 13 over 13 plus 13i over 13. That is minus 1 plus 1i. Let's look at the last example. Okay, so we look at another example. 1 plus I to divide to just I. Again, multiply top and bottom by the conjugate of the bottom. So the conjugate of the bottom is minus I. The bottom I have minus I times minus I is minus I squared. I squared is minus 1. So minus minus is just plus 1. So I'll write 1 just that we'll see it, but actually we won't write it after that because the division by 1 is just the same number. And on the top I multiply top with top. So 1 times minus I is minus I. And I by minus I is minus I squared. We have to deal with the I squared. So I squared is minus 1. Minus minus is plus. So we have plus 1 minus 1i. And it's all over 1. So the final answer, 1 minus 1i.